That enveloping rhythm we feel when we listen to the sound of waves crashing on the shore. The sense of vastness we experience when we gaze at the horizon intensifies as we dive into this mystery, as if it were a sign or even a calling, inviting us to reconnect with our origins. Some believe this connection comes from the 9 months we spend within a silent ocean that prepared us to arrive in this world. In a similar way, it was being submerged more than 3 billion years ago that gave the first forms of life a chance to emerge. On a planet that still had no ozone layer, with high levels of ultraviolet radiation and constant volcanic activity, breathing the atmospheric air was not easy. Like a shield, the ocean provided the protection and the conditions necessary for the first microorganisms to begin photosynthesis and release oxygen. If it was here that the first forms of life emerged, it's only natural that we find them in the most unusual shapes and behaviors. Creatures that seem not to belong to the same planet as us hide throughout this vastness. Guardians of secrets and adaptations that allow them to withstand all this surrounding pressure of the water. Even today, we haven't been able to replicate such resistance in our equipment, and so more than 80% of everything down here remains an absolute mystery, keeping alive the spark of the discoveries humanity has yet to make. As we sink deeper, the warm colors of the corals disappear, turning into dark blue tones. Combined with the reduction of light below 200 meters, many species that depend on sunlight disappear, and this shapes the entire landscape around us. This interferes with the abilities of those who chose to live here. Super abilities, to be fair. Trusting your feel is more advantageous than trying to see where you are. The ampullae of Lorenzini, those pores near the shark's mouth, are electroreceptors that pick up the electrical signals and impulses of muscle movements, even the beating of your heart. Stingrays, which are also part of this group of elasmobranchs, share this same receptor, very useful for burying themselves and waiting for prey to approach. Going deeper means falling into absolute darkness. Here, light ceases to be something accessible to all and becomes a privileged resource, used to confuse, intimidate, attract, and deceive other species, after all. Approaching the only point of light that everyone may be observing may not be the smartest thing to do. And it is in this darkness that we find a life form that seems to have come out of science fiction movies, possessing smooth movements that even resemble a dance, the dance of jellyfish. Tiny pulses, intermittent glimmers, fragments of light floating in the void, like stars that decided to inhabit the ocean. Floating slowly, without haste, as if time were unimportant, their translucent bodies reveal that little is needed for existence. Without bones, without a brain to command, each movement happens on its own, by pure instinct, as if it already knew what needed to be done. Very similar to salps, gelatinous beings that float in long chains, like living currents crossing the ocean. At first glance, they seem fragile, almost unreal, but they play an essential role. When they feed, they filter enormous quantities of water, capturing phytoplankton, microscopic organisms that sustain much of marine life. In a single day, a chain of salps can filter impressive volumes of water, cleaning and transforming. And in doing so, they help transport carbon from the surface to the depths in an invisible process, but fundamental to the planet's balance. Invisible and fundamental is how educational channels on YouTube have been receiving recognition. If you're enjoying them, consider subscribing. In just a few seconds, you'll be supporting work that takes days to create with great care for your immersion. And in this immensity, where form is malleable and body density approaches that of water itself, survival does not depend on strength, but on efficiency. Gelatinous bodies require less energy. Slow movements prevent them from being detected. And while many drift along in the flow of the currents, others resist it, as not all have the same abilities to impose the direction they want to go. Some need to hold on as much as possible to remain where they already know. In places where currents are unpredictable, holding on can mean the difference between staying or disappearing. Some forms of life have developed a different strategy: to hold on, to try to anchor themselves and somehow resist the constant flow of the ocean. And it is in this scenario that we begin to find creatures that challenge the need to have highly developed, agile movement. Seahorses have vision similar to chameleons. Each eye can move in a different direction. Since they don't have teeth, they end up having to suck up food that passes near them. They depend on the luck of the currents to bring them microcrustaceans, because with their tiny fins, they can't go after their own food. For creatures without a stomach like them, where all the food goes straight to the intestine and is quickly absorbed, they end up being unable to store energy reserves, creating a constant need to feed. Relying on their camouflage and simply waiting, hostages of luck, is all that remains for this creature that was poorly favored during evolution. In calm waters, where time seems to slow down, seahorses meet in an almost ritualistic way. Unlike many inhabitants of the ocean, they don't surrender to chance. They build bonds. Before any new generation emerges, the pair performs a delicate dance. Bodies that align, tails that intertwine, smooth movements that can last minutes, sometimes hours. It is not just a spectacle, it is a process of recognition, of trust. When the moment arrives, the female transfers her eggs to a structure unique in nature, the male's brood pouch. It is there that something extraordinary happens. The male fertilizes the eggs and begins to carry them. like a kind of reversed pregnancy. When they are born, they are released into the world without any parental care. From that moment on, they are on their own. Carried by the currents, fragile and almost invisible, few will survive. Those who endure will need to grow quickly, develop enough strength in their tails to hold on to vegetation, and in this way escape an unpredictable fate in the open ocean. And even so, despite the odds, the cycle continues. And somewhere between the currents and the silence of the sea, another pair begins to dance again. While sea stars have chosen adaptations to explore the sea floor, using their hundreds of tube feet that serve not only to walk, but also to feed or even to cling to a surface. Sea lilies, despite having a somewhat similar shape, have focused on lightness and passive capture. With their arms that open in multiple directions, delicate, branched, almost hypnotic, capturing particles that drift by, as if they were made to sift the ocean. Unlike the stars that explore the ground, they wait, patient, motionless, trusting that everything they need will come with the current. Almost motionless at first glance, sea urchins have chosen defense with their rigid spines. Even so, despite the differences, sea stars, sea urchins, and sea lilies are part of the same group, the echinoderms. But not everything that has chosen to remain still surrenders to passivity. Between the rocks, in the crevices of the reef, there are presences that do not fully reveal themselves. Elongated bodies, hidden almost entirely, leaving only what is essential exposed. A watchful gaze, and a mouth that opens and closes continuously. Not as a threat, but as part of the very act of breathing. While some wait for food to come with the current, others wait for the right moment. And it is in this same seafloor, among irregular structures and narrow spaces, that predators emerge that have turned hiding into strategy. Moray eels, with no unnecessary movements, they remain there, watching. With their bodies fitted into spaces that seem custom-made, they occupy narrow crevices, irregular holes, regions where few can enter and even fewer can leave easily. Only the head projects outward, almost motionless, as if it were just another formation of the reef itself. And even so, nothing there is random. Every choice of shelter, every position, every angle seems calculated to see without being seen, to sense without exposing themselves. With limited vision, they do not rely only on what they see. It is in the invisible signals carried by the water. Here, scent spreads, and through it they perceive what approaches, as if they could read the environment even before it reveals what is about to come. And while the ocean moves, currents cross the reef, particles dance around, light flickers, fragments disappears, they remain. Unhurried,
with no need to follow the rhythm around them, as if time there did not carry the same urgency. By opening and closing their mouths continuously, they force water to pass through their gills, extracting from it the oxygen needed to remain there, motionless, in silence, simply existing on the edge between waiting and action. And in that balance, the body does not need to be fast nor dominant, only precise. Because in that limited space where every movement matters, there is an advantage in knowing every detail, every limit, every possibility. And it is this familiarity with their own territory that turns shelter into opportunity, until in a single instant the environment becomes their trap. But not every trap is made to capture. Some are made to protect. Among the structures of the reef, bodies move slowly with the current, like living extensions of the environment itself.
The anemones, their tentacles, soft at first glance, carry thousands of stinging cells, capable of paralyzing any small organism that comes too close. A single touch, and what once seemed harmless becomes the end. But for some, this rule does not apply. Among these tentacles exists a relationship. The clownfish, small yet clever, able to remain among the anemone's tentacles, appearing completely at ease. Before inhabiting this space, it goes through a careful process, a gradual contact, controlled, until its body adapts and forms a layer of mucus, acting as an invisible protection, allowing it to pass through the tentacles without being affected. There, where others find danger, it finds a home. In return, the clownfish provides movement, drives away small intruders, removes debris, and even attracts prey to the anemone itself. A relationship built on the edge between risk and trust. Here, what is a threat to some becomes refuge for others. And once again, the ocean shows that survival is not always about avoiding danger. Sometimes it is about learning to live with it. Unlike animals that have adapted to stay and remain in one place, there is a curious creature that has adapted to be anywhere, even when you are not seeing it. A true master of disguise. Without bones, without any rigid structure to limit its movements, it can pass through narrow crevices, fit into improbable spaces, and camouflage itself with extreme ease. For octopuses, disappearing is something simple. Their skin carries a precise and flexible adaptation. Across their body, thousands of cells respond almost instantly to the surrounding stimuli. Expanding, contracting, altering not only the color, but the patterns that run across their body. Spots emerge, lines break apart, contrasts appear and fade, recreating patterns that already exist in the environment. Irregular rocks, fragments of coral, unstable shadows projected by the water. Everything can be reproduced with a level of detail difficult to follow with the naked eye. And it is not just about appearance. The skin itself changes. Small structures rise or retract, creating textures that mimic rough surfaces, or smoothing the body until it blends with the sandy bottom. The result is not just camouflage, it is continuity, as if there were no clear separation between the animal and the environment. Even so, it is not always enough. In moments of exposure, when proximity becomes a danger, the body responds in another way. A sudden jet breaks the silence, and a dark cloud spreads through the water, dense enough to interrupt any attempt of visual tracking. While attention is fixed on that point, the octopus has already moved, fast, directed, searching for another surface, another contour, where, in a few seconds, the process begins again. Without a fixed territory, without a definitive form, its presence is never permanent. It happens, and soon it stops happening. And in the space where there was once movement, only the scene remains, unchanged, as if nothing had ever passed through it. But we should not attribute all of this only to its physical abilities. There is within this creature a constant reading of the environment, arms that explore and learn, testing every surface around them, as if each contact added some kind of understanding. Faced with an obstacle, it does not insist on the same path. It retreats, goes around, tries another possibility, until it finds a way out. It is common to see it approaching shells, loose fragments, small natural shelters, not by chance. It thinks, decides, changes its mind, reorganizes itself within the space it finds. And when nothing seems enough, it creates time. Enough to disappear and emerge somewhere else. And it is within this set of silent decisions that the octopus stops being just an ordinary creature, proving that animals are capable of learning and feeling. If there's one thing I know you wouldn't want to feel, it's the attack of this next animal, capable of turning a tiny movement into an absurd impact. The mantis shrimp. Hidden between crevices, burrows, and sandy regions of the reef, it spends much of its time observing what happens around its own shelter. At first glance, it doesn't seem threatening, but in its two front appendages, it carries one of the fastest attacks ever recorded in the animal kingdom. The strike happens so fast that it becomes difficult to even follow at normal speed. Its acceleration is comparable to that of a projectile fired from a small caliber firearm. The impact is powerful enough to break shells, shatter exoskeletons, and crack structures that seemed far too resistant for an animal of that size. If you place your ears underwater in regions where this shrimp can be found, you can hear the dry snapping sound echoing through the water, and you can be sure it managed to crack open whatever shell it found. And maybe that's exactly why almost everything around it learns to keep its distance. There are different species of mantis shrimp, some specialized in piercing, others in smashing. Those that use impact strikes usually hunt hard-shelled animals, snails, small crustaceans, and mollusks, prey that would hardly be opened without such an extreme adaptation. And despite the violence of its attack, most of its life happens hidden away, digging, rearranging sand, expanding small burrows between rocks and corals, as if it were building its own refuge, piece by piece. Its eyes also carry something unusual. While we perceive only a small fraction of existing colors, they can detect a much wider range of variations, including patterns of light invisible to the human eye. Maybe that's why its eyes seem so attentive, almost fascinated by the colors of the corals around it. And while some lobsters challenge time for more than a century, others live like brief stars of the ocean, intense, colorful, and fleeting. In that small space between rocks, living depends on many things: precision, speed, attention. And that the mantis shrimp has in abundance. In an ocean this vast, it's natural to wonder where the great creatures are. Amid all this endless blue, what could exist hidden beyond the reach of our eyes? The whale shark, the largest fish on the planet. Some individuals can exceed more than 12 meters in length. And even so, almost everything about it contradicts the idea we normally associate with sharks, because they are incredibly calm. There is no fast pursuit, nor aggressive behavior. Its movement is slow, constant, as if it were crossing the ocean without any hurry at all. While tiny particles of life gather in the water, it simply moves forward. Plankton, small fish, krill, everything is filtered slowly while it swims with its mouth open. It's curious to think that the largest creatures in the ocean chose to feed on things so small. Its body is covered in pale patterns, unique spots and lines, like constellations scattered across its skin. No pattern seems exactly the same as another. And as it continues crossing tropical regions around the planet, the ocean itself seems to slow down around it. But in even deeper waters, there are creatures that took size to another level. Not fish, mammals, animals that constantly need to return to the surface because, unlike most life around them, they depend on atmospheric air. Whales, creatures that still carry in their lungs a connection to a terrestrial past, even while spending almost their entire lives submerged. Some cross entire oceans during their migrations, traveling thousands of kilometers, guided by temperature, food, and ocean currents, as if the maps of the planet were already drawn inside their minds. And even as giants, many times we barely notice their presence until the silence changes. Deep sounds travel absurd distances underwater, low echoes capable of moving across hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers. Calls that cross the darkness of the ocean long before any visual contact ever happens. Some species dive for more than an hour without returning to the surface, enduring extreme pressure in depths where light no longer reaches. Others use bubbles, coordinated movements, collective strategies to gather entire schools of fish. There is intelligence there, memory, learning. Calves remain close to their mothers for years, learning migration routes, sounds, behaviors, like ancient knowledge being passed forward almost in silence. And even creatures so enormous still need to rise, to breathe, to break the surface for a few moments before disappearing once again into the depths. Maybe that is exactly what makes their presence feel so different. Because even belonging to the ocean, a part of them never completely left the world above the water. Between the creatures that live in this constant balance between surface and depth, some have carried this connection with the ocean for far longer than we can even imagine. Sea turtles, ancient reptiles, existing millions of years before humanity itself appeared. While continents shifted, species disappeared, and entire oceans transformed, they kept crossing ocean currents, almost the exact same way. Their movements seem economical. Without apparent effort, each stroke of their flippers slowly pushes the body through the water, as if they already know exactly how much energy is worth spending in such a vast environment. Like whales, they also need to return to the surface to breathe. Males spend practically their entire lives in the ocean. They leave the beach straight into the sea and never return, living there and dying without ever setting foot on land again. The females, on the other hand, carry a mysterious connection to the beaches where they were born. After years crossing the planet's continents, they return close to the same shores where they once ran toward the arms of the sea, even after decades have passed. And when they return, the females lay their eggs buried in the sand and then disappear back into the ocean again. Months later, the hatchlings emerge alone. Tiny bodies running toward the sea, guided only by the natural light on the horizon. And then they disappear too. For a long time, scientists didn't even understand where they went during their first years of life. As if an entire part of a turtle's existence happened in complete mystery. Survival rates are extremely low. Very few make it to adulthood, and even so, somehow, it keeps working. Because millions of years later, they are still here. Crossing oceans, returning to the same regions, repeating invisible routes, like creatures tied to a cycle far older than our own species. Some can live for many decades, long enough to cross the seas countless times, surfacing from time to take a breath of air. Even so adapted to marine life, they still carry traces of the reptile's terrestrial past. While crossing reefs, seagrass meadows, open waters, each species fills a different role. Some feed on jellyfish, even helping control their populations. Others search for small organisms on the ocean floor. The green sea turtle, for example, when fully grown, begins feeding mainly on marine vegetation, and by feeding on algae, helps keep these underwater fields healthy. Without that constant control, vegetation grows chaotically, loses nutrients, and compromises the balance of countless other species that depend on that environment. And maybe that is what makes their presence feel so different. Not only the smooth movements or the calm way they move through the water, but the feeling of observing a creature that does not seem to fight against the ocean, only exist alongside it. as if, after millions of years, it had already learned exactly when to move forward and when to simply let the current continue on its way. To sleep, they reduce their oxygen consumption, allowing them to remain submerged for long periods, wedged between rocks or resting beneath reef structures. In certain regions, it is common to see small fish accompanying sea turtles, removing algae, parasites, and debris accumulated on the shell. A simple relationship, but important for both sides. The shell also works as protection against pressure, impacts, and attacks. But unlike what many imagine, it is part of the turtle's own body. It is impossible for it to leave its shell. Some turtles travel thousands of kilometers between feeding and breeding grounds, crossing entire oceanic borders, knowing that direction matters more than speed.
It takes patience and a lot of time, and even then, it still won't be possible to observe every corner, every hidden detail, sculpted by the currents and decorated by the corals. Be it small or large, slow or fast, the ocean always makes room for different forms of life. And among the creatures that awaken the most curiosity and connection with human beings, dolphins could hardly be left out. Odontocete mammals, close relatives of whales. They share many anatomical similarities: the hydrodynamic shape of the body, lung breathing, the constant need to return to the surface, separated mainly by the scale of size and by the presence of teeth. While many whales developed structures similar to bristles inside the mouth to filter krill and tiny organisms from the water, dolphins followed another path. They opted for teeth to grab fish or squid and swallow them, rarely hunting alone. They live in extremely social groups where communication and coordination between individuals are part of everyday life. In the first years of life, they depend completely on their mother's milk. The calves remain close to their mothers almost all the time, learning movements, sounds, behaviors, and hunting strategies by observing the group itself. And perhaps one of the most interesting things about cetaceans is this collective learning and parental presence during the first years of life, something many species living in the ocean do not possess. In some regions, entire pods develop their own hunting techniques, different from other groups of the same species. Some surround schools of fish in synchronized movements. Others use the sandy seafloor to lift clouds of sediment, confusing smaller fish and separating individuals from the main school. There are groups that drive schools of fish toward the surface or even toward beaches, reducing escape possibilities until the exact moment of the attack. Everything happens quickly. Almost instant changes of direction, jumps, coordinated approaches, as if each individual already knew exactly which position it should occupy. And to maintain all this coordination, sound becomes essential. Just like whales, dolphins live in an environment where seeing is not always enough. So they emit clicks, whistles, and sound pulses in multiple directions. And when these sounds hit surrounding objects and return, it allows them to perceive distance, shape, and movement, as if they were capable of building images using sound alone, using echolocation. And despite the friendly appearance we usually associate with them, life in the ocean still demands constant attention. Sharks, food scarcity, changing currents, fishing nets, boats interfering with echolocation. The danger remains present. Perhaps that is exactly why the bonds within the group are so important. Calves remain protected in the center of the pod. From the very first rise to take a breath right after being born, assisted by an older member of the group. And in many other moments, the entire pod seems to function almost like a single organism in motion. They can remain submerged for several minutes before returning to breathe. Some species travel vast distances, following temperature changes and the movement of food sources, always in motion. During both day and night, they end up sleeping for only a few minutes or even seconds at a time, resting one half of the brain at a time. In the ocean, dolphins seem like the very personification of agility, speed, and group coordination.
While fish and schools push group coordination to an almost artistic level, there is no leader guiding every movement. And even so, it feels as if each individual already knows exactly where it should go. By reacting to the movements of the fish around them, they create almost instant changes in direction, figures that form, break apart, and reorganize themselves once again. Living waves crossing the ocean in perfect synchrony. A strategy that confuses predators, makes attacks more difficult, and turns it almost impossible to predict where the school will move next. In the middle of the ocean's chaos, there is something hypnotic about watching thousands of bodies move as if they were a single organism. And the truth is, this is only a small part of what still remains hidden below the surface. Creatures, behaviors, places, still waiting to be discovered. And with your comment and subscription supporting the channel, I'll bring more videos very soon. Check out the channel's playlist and see you next time